All right, everybody, if you can hear the sound of my voice, stay off the stage. Stay off the stage. Thank you guys for coming to ILT Academy for today's webinar. This is our entrepreneur webinar series. Today's topic is From Sketch to MVP, sponsored by our friends at Fastlane 94. We've got 3 entrepreneurs that have been curated by our community, and this topic was curated by our community because we need to know about how to go from an idea and insights and actually turn it into tangible products and services. Our 3 outstanding founders today are Aneela Idnani, Luke Komiskey, and Braden Ericson. I'm going to tell you more about them in a moment, but first I want to give a big thank you to our sponsors at Fastlane 94 and welcome Leslie Dingman. Leslie, I'm going to turn you on Spotlight here so that everybody can hear you.
All right.
All right, give me one more second. I hit the wrong button. There we go. And okay.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Dingman. I am a business development director at Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation, but also GSDC leads the Fastlane 94 hub. Welcome to the webinar series. This is now our second in a series of 6 webinars that we'll be hosting through the end of the year and then through 2025. And really our mission at Fastlane 94 is to start and grow entrepreneurship by providing technical assistance. We do one-on-one mentoring. We help find financial resources for our entrepreneurs and help put on training programs designed to help entrepreneurs, whether they are just having an idea or they're ready to launch their business. So welcome today. We look forward to hearing feedback from this webinar and seeing you at our future webinars in 2025.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. Appreciate that. And appreciate you guys sponsoring this webinar series. It's super cool. Fastlane 94 is sponsoring a number of webinars, all designed to help innovators and entrepreneurs move forward on their idea. So this is really, really cool. I would like to now introduce our 3 panelists. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. And I'm just clicking a couple buttons over here on my end so that we can see everybody. There we go. So our first speaker that I want to talk about is Aneela Idnani, co-founder of HabitAware. Having grown up with a hair-pulling disorder, trichotillomania. Did I say that right? Or was I close? Close. Good. Aneela Idnani is a TEDx speaker and entrepreneur raising awareness of these very common yet little known mental health conditions. As a co-founder and president of HabitAware, Aneela co-invented a smart bracelet that brings real-time awareness to trance-like body-focused repetitive behaviors. HabitAware is a Time magazine's best invention and Fast Company world-changing idea. Aneela is an award-winning and compassionate leader. She founded BFRB Changemakers, a nonprofit to further support the community, and her mental health memoir with new Harbinger publications, which will arrive in 2025. So that is awesome. That sounds super cool. Everybody, welcome Aneela. I know they're all clapping right now. You just can't hear them because they're not on the stage. Our second speaker is Luke Komiskey. Luke is the founder and CEO of DataDrive. DataDrive is a data consulting firm providing managed analytics services. DataDrive helps growing mid-sized organizations transform their data insights through an ongoing partnership model to provide both the data platform and team for delivering faster informed decisions, managed analytics services without the hassle of hiring expensive data teams and managing that infrastructure. Luke, thank you for coming today. I know it sounds like one person's clapping. There are other people clapping. I can see in the room. And then lastly, Braden Ericson. Braden is a seasoned SaaS expert with experience taking startups from idea to market, a former PayPal top inventor. He founded Sparrow, a reporting platform that grew to 6,000 users and was acquired. Now, Braden leverages his technical and founder expertise to guide early-stage ventures specializing in 0 to 1 product development, engineering leadership, and go-to-market strategies. So, guys, thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights and knowledge. I'm excited for this webinar. All right. Now, this is the time where you guys are going to turn on your microphones. And for everybody else, just remember, this is a camera on session. So please turn your cameras on. That way we can see everybody's bright and smiley faces. For those of you that have never been to ILT, just another thing that we like doing different is making sure that those we can see everybody and you're not just shadows in the background. So thank you so much. All right. I would like to open this up, and Aneela, so how did you identify the initial problem or pain point that inspired your product?
First, thank you for having me, and thank all of you for being here today to hear about starting ideas from sketch to MVP. I think it's so important to help share this information with folks who may not necessarily see themselves as entrepreneurs, but everybody's got a problem and a solution in them and can get it to market if they want to. So how did we figure out that hair pulling was a problem? For me, it started when I was 12. And so just really from that personal experience of 20 plus years of hurting and hiding, not understanding why I was pulling out my hair as a kid. And then coming to finally realize decades later that it was a mental health condition. But still feeling this like stigma and guilt and shame that led me to hide it for so long. And then a couple of years ago, I was pulling after, one late night, and in the morning I woke up, looked in the mirror by my bed, and saw that I had completely pulled out an entire eyebrow before, which was the first time that I'd ever really done that. It was just so uncontrollable. And jumped up to get my black eye pencil, and my husband was coming out of the bathroom as I was going in, and he bumped into me and looked at me and said, "Aneela, where are your eyebrows?" And that was this sort of moment of sharing my secret. And he met me with love and compassion and tried to understand what was happening. And then a couple of days later, we're sitting on the couch and I'm pulling, and he gently grabbed my hand. And that was the aha moment of, if I just knew that I was doing this behavior, could I make a change? And so that's what we built at HabitAware, is a smart bracelet that brings awareness to these physical unwanted hand movements of hair pulling, skin picking, and nail biting. So
awesome. Thank you.
Is how I started.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really great. Luke, same question for you. So how did you identify that initial pain point that inspired your product?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll echo what Aneela said of, thanks for providing this great resource and webinar today, and thanks for the invite. For me, my background comes from a very heavy services oriented consulting background. And so a lot of my background is, helping analytics for a lot of larger organizations. And during my time building a pure kind of services, traditional consulting type firm, we'd often get outreach from small, mid-sized organizations that, wanted all of the skill sets that we were providing for the bigger players in this space. But a common challenge that continued to come up is, despite our best efforts of really building some great data assets and automations for them, is we would leave a lot of these small, mid-sized businesses with the same type of feedback, that they had no means in which to support and continue to evolve what we've been doing for them. And that was kind of our big aha moment as a company of, I think there's like this very much of an underserved small, mid-sized organizations that are trying to do more with their data. There's no shortage of data that they get to play around with, but identifying the pain point that it's hard for them to go out and hire full-time data teams to make that happen is where, we've taken a step as a services firm to move towards productized services. That's what's helped us evolve this whole concept of managed analytics services.
Cool. Very cool. Braden, and lastly for you, how did you identify the initial problem for Sparrow?
Yeah, and of course, like everyone else, excited to be here and share more about my journey and talking about sketch to MVP. For me, it actually started with my very first startup in college. We built a consumer mobile app that helped college students find exciting events around their campus, things to do on the weekend, things they can do with their friends. We built this app, and then, as the technical founder, kind of relied on my business partner to help grow the business. But we really kind of struggled to find a way to get the product in front of customers. And so something I did was a little growth hacky at the time. I wrote a script on Twitter that would take our account and follow other accounts on Twitter, because that's just, I mean, if you think about it, that's free impressions. It's free marketing. Every time you followed someone back then, they would get a notification, oh, the Jabb mobile app has followed you. Oh, what's Jabb? Especially if you're targeting people that are under 25 in the Twin Cities metro area where I was at the time. It was a really effective way to get some growth. And so while the mobile app didn't end up working out, that little script, I started selling it as a service to marketing agencies. And as part of selling that as a service, they came back to me and said, hey, this is great, but is there any way you can develop some sort of reporting as part of this feature? And, reporting wasn't something I really understood what that was. Again, I was just out of college, and turns out marketing agencies really struggled to consolidate and put together their client reports. And, kind of learning more and talking to more customers, realized that this was a pain point and something that could be built with software. So a few years into PayPal, I decided, hey, I want to give this a shot. So I left, and that's kind of, how I started Sparrow.
Nice. Very cool. Aneela, I'm really sorry, but we're still getting some reverb from you in the room. There we go. That's okay. We'll just do we'll do that. That way we can hear everybody. Great. All right, I'm going to go reverse order. So Braden, as you thought about this problem, how did you validate that problem? Like, how did you figure out that this was actually something worth solving beyond that initial insight or inspiration? Because as one of the things we talk about is, don't go build a product and spend tons of money trying to solve it until you really, really know. So how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, and honestly, I did not do it the right way when I first built. I talked to a few marketing agencies. They said, hey, I want this, I'll pay you $50. I'm like, great, thanks. That's money, that's validation. I talked to 2 other marketing agencies. They said, hey, this is great. Let me know when it's live and I'll start paying you for it. I very quickly found out, okay, I spent 7 months building the product. I went back to those marketing agencies and, radio silence. The problem wasn't, at the time, what I was targeting and building with that first iteration of the product. It wasn't painful enough to all the customers I was talking to at the time. It wasn't painful enough for them to even respond back to my emails or be willing to pay me once, doing it as a service or something. So short answer there is I did not do it the right way. I think iteration after iteration, probably 3 years in, brought on a sales consultant, and with one of the products we spun out of Sparrow called reporting.dev, really did it differently and validated that by actually putting together sketches and Figma with my designer. And I actually went to other SaaS companies, and it was an embedded analytics solution we were selling to other SaaS startups. What I did was I'd take the designs and I went and met with these SaaS founders and said, hey, this is what we're building. Is this interesting to you? And they'd say, yeah, this is great. But instead of just saying, okay, great, I'm going to go build it, I said, okay, well, can you pay me now? Like, let's do this. Like, what's stopping you?
Right.
Really forcing the objections up front. And ultimately with that, we were able to close, I think, $20,000 in a couple months just by walking through designs with potential customers, and people paid us to actually build it. So long story short, went through a couple different mistakes and different ways to validating, and ultimately found if you can get people to pay you up front or give you some sort of firm commitment, that's the best way to validate before you go and spend money building.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's really cool to hear. Luke, how about you? How did you validate this before you, if you validated it before you started building? But when did you really know that this was a thing?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the benefit for what the space I was working in is, running a consulting firm, you're getting kind of paid to do customer interviews and see customer pain points. So one thing I would suggest, like for attendees of this too, is, consulting and services can be a really, it's not always this sexy industry because it's not terribly scalable, but it's a fantastic way to, build cash flow and discover pain points that you're not going to be able to see. I'm a traditional computer science background, so like I haven't had the benefit of working directly in businesses to see the pain points that some people build. And so for me, coming from a pure kind of services shop, once I flipped the lens on how I wanted to think about building out a productized offering, eventually transitioning it into a more of a product focus, is going back to our small, mid-sized customers that we knew we wanted to target and really just validate, like, is there money that they're willing to put up to solve this pain point? And so for us, we were able to kind of like slowly build up our service offering that we, are able to confidently pitch today as a very piecemeal solutions of, would you pay for support? Would you pay for us to manage your warehouse? Would you pay for some kind of person to like be updating dashboards? And then from there, we're able to really sketch out what is the pain point that really people want to solve, and what are they willing to pain point or to solve to pay for that. Because it continues to evolve today, but a lot of the bullet points that we have on our website today are after a lot of trial and error of other bullet points that didn't make the final cut. And so that's really how we were able to validate it.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Now, Aneela, this is going to be really interesting, especially for many entrepreneurs that are scratching their own itch, right? That I have the problem I'm trying to solve, and it's really easy to then go like, well, then I must solve it by making this like new business. But how did you validate that this was in fact something that a problem that other people had, and that they wanted it solved with this product, and that they wanted you to solve it? How did you do that? How did you validate?
Yeah, it really came down to, are there other people like me? And so, in that time of Samir finding out what this condition was, he took to the internet. He found he found like the nonprofit in this space and the data around how many people this affects. And then I found these online Facebook groups with 15,000, well, at the time it was like 2,000, 3,000 people. Now they're up to like 15,000, 20,000, 30,000. And so we knew there was a need. We could read those comments. We could see people talking about just how debilitating and how stressful this was making their life. And so from that, we knew this was worth taking the time to try to solve.
Cool. That's very cool. Now, friends that have come to listen, if you have questions that you are thinking about, especially as our panelists are talking, please put them into the Gather chat. Delilah is dutifully looking for questions because we will be opening this up to Q&A very shortly, and then I will start asking questions from the gallery for our great panelists. So, but I want to move now. We've talked about some insights and ideas. Let's talk about planning and prototyping, right? Because it's one thing to have an idea, and it's another thing to build it. But there's this stage in between where you need to figure out like what to build, and then how do we get it into a prototype stage where it might be really close to an MVP. But I wanted to hear from each of you, and Luke, we'll start with you. So how did you decide which features to prioritize? And how did you test them before building out your full MVP?
Yeah, and in our case, admittedly, it was the person who was willing to pay the most got to steer a lot of the the product roadmap of like the areas we were going to steer towards. So, yeah, for people who were putting up that initial investment and helping us build out, we were always just trying to balance against making a happy customer, but also striving for simplicity behind the scenes. So every single request that would come in, we would take that from a perspective of like, how much is this going to really like scale from our perspective in terms of like market need, as well as like how many other people are going to use that type of feature set. And so I think that way of doing it, it allowed us to, quickly build trust with, initial customer, get really good customer testimonials, case studies out there in front of people, and really kind of help us hone for, in our space, we're kind of unique in that we've got a potential large scale of potential customers out there. Like our challenge, if nothing else, is to like pick which industry vertical we want to try to win in. But in this case, it's if a specific industry is willing to pay for this solution, like let's go build that solution that's gonna cover for in our case like it was school districts, or cover for manufacturers, or cover for marketing. That's really what guided a lot of our initial roadmap, with the perspective of keeping it as simple as possible. Right? We could have made it technically sophisticated, but we really strove for minimal amount of moving parts on our side, so that we could still continue to rip, pivot, and jam in a pinch as we kind of grew with that customer.
Okay, that's good. Braden, how about you? How'd you figure out what features to prioritize, and how did you test?
Yeah, so when I first started, the software engineer in me just said, well, I know this, but I'm just going to build. I'm just going to keep building, and people are going to, start paying me more for every feature I add. Believe it or not, that is not the case. Really kind of when I first started out, it was a lot of struggling to, I talk to customers, they'd say that's exciting. I'd go and build it, and then they would ghost me. I had a coffee shop, virtual meeting during COVID with someone who was at a coffee shop, wearing his mask, and he said, Braden, I love what you just showed me. If I had my credit card on me right now, I would pay for this today. Well, he was sitting at a coffee shop, so he did have his credit card on him, most likely. He was just being nice and, did not follow up with me afterwards. And so what I've learned from that experience was, when you're prioritizing features and you're prioritizing things you should build, it goes back to the same questions on validating your business model. Are people going to pay me for this? Great. Can you pay me now to build this feature? If they're not going to pay you now, can they pay you to do it as a service first? Ultimately, whatever you can do to generate revenue, because you're building a business. So even in the software world, if it's not software at first, that's fine. But you need to generate revenue somehow, because that's going to be the best way to validate you're building something in the right track. And just kind of like Luke was saying, who's going to pay me the most? Because the amount of money someone's willing to pay is also an indicator of how painful this problem is to them, and how likely they're going to stick with you if you can keep solving that problem.
Nice. That's great. No, that's really cool to hear. Aneela, with the physical product, this is I'm excited to hear what you say.
Yeah, so that night on the couch, I literally went like this, kind of wrapped my fingers around my wrists and sort of initially thought it's got to be a bracelet. But what happened was we really did kind of, in terms of like the feature set, we really just knew that it had to raise awareness of what our hands were doing. And that was like the one thing that we needed to figure out how to develop. Everything else was secondary, but the first thing after saying, okay, it's got to be a smart bracelet, I actually went back to pen and paper and wrote down, how else might I become aware of my hands moving in a way that I don't want them to? And so I drew like something that kind of kept my elbow together. I drew like an idea of just having heavy weights on my wrists and things like that, just to kind of get the juices flowing of what other options are there, and then looking at those and just being like, okay, which of these options would people actually use? Like, it's fine to sit at home and use weights on your wrists, but when you're out in the real world, people are going to stare at you and look at you in the same way if your hair pulling out your hair.
Right.
How do we find something discreet? And so that's kind of the way that we kind of just went through what is the right product, and then answering that problem of what is the problem and what are the features that really deliver on that problem first, and then using customer feedback to add in later on.
Great. Now, as you were doing that, what mistakes did you make during the planning and prototyping phase? What are some mistakes that other innovators and entrepreneurs can learn from? Oh, Aneela, I'm sorry. For you first.
Yep. Yeah. No. Great question. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes. I try to forget them, even though I know you're supposed to learn from them. I think one of the biggest mistakes was actually we're kind of dealing with the reverberations of that now, is just realizing how many kids are affected and not designing the bracelet to fit small wrists. And so that's kind of a miss for us that I wish we had kind of sort of seen that earlier on. And I think with developing hardware, there's always these different mistakes in terms of like which tech and which sensors and those kinds of things, which I can't really speak to because I'm more on the marketing side. So there was definitely things there. And then also just mistakes in terms of building community. There were a few moments where, I mean, on the whole, it's just amazing to see how many people are behind us. But there's definitely been some mistakes there in terms of communication and language that we may have used. I mean, even our name, HabitAware, people get a little upset because they don't want to see these behaviors as habits. And the truth, like the goal is that when you become habit aware, it's really you're becoming aware of your healthy habits and instilling those in your life. And so little things like that are some of the mistakes that we made along the way.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Braden, how about for you?
Yes, I mean, yeah, same. So many mistakes. It's just, I feel like that's how you learn and how you become a better entrepreneur is you need to make more and more mistakes so then you don't make those mistakes again. I think for me, it was my background in software and product. I got overexcited. I said, okay, well, I can just build this. It's going to take me a couple months. Why do any more validation when I could just spend 2 months heads down, write some code, hire a guy to help me with some parts of it so I can go even faster. And then, once it's built, I can then go talk to customers. I talked to the 3 or 4 I did at the very beginning. I had 1 or 2 paying me for that little script I had written. Turns out that, as I learned now, that is not the right way to do it, as I'm sure you've all learned from the programming here, is you need to be talking to customers. If you're not talking to customers, you're very quickly going to go down you're going to make a bunch of assumptions or go down the wrong path. So for me, that was the first mistake I did, was I just kind of built. And then the second big mistake was every time customer gave me a feature request, it's like, oh, that makes sense. That aligns with the vision for what I want to build. Same thing. I'd sit down for a month. I'd go and build that feature out. And I'd come back to that customer and say, hey, it's built. And they say, oh, thanks. Cool. And then they wouldn't use it. And so there's a little bit of extra validation that I should have been doing with some of these feature requests or just talking to more and more customers before I just jump the gun and go build. And that's kind of the blessing and curse of being able to code in the software world is you see the problem, you're like, oh, I can build that, done. I'm just going to go do it. Then you skip the validation part, and it's just you end up wasting a lot of cycles.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I like to stress to other product builders is that there's methods and there's process, and as you're thinking about how you're going to plan and bring your product to the market is to follow those things, not to hold you back, but to keep you on track, because it's so easy to get distracted by things that our customers want or things that our customers say they need, but that's like a one-off. And so like Luke, for you, as you were talking about bringing the product to the market was really pushed forward by customers that will pay, which is always a great way to go. So what mistakes did you learn during that process of going from solving this problem to like turning it into an actual more scalable, serviceable product?
Yeah. I mean, there's like two things that come to mind when we think about kind of that initial step. Is one, after we got through those kind of initial set of commercial paying customers, I think we got too clever internally with trying to develop a feature set that we thought the market needed. And a lot of those design, like especially in productized services, there's a lot of decisions you have to make on, can we do this at scale? Is it worth the extra price tag of like, people power that we're going to need to like support that type of features? Mm-hmm. And many of those decisions were like, and I think any tech entrepreneur in the room can probably relate, is like, we always feel like we like can give them all the cool things that we know that the market needs, but then the realities of business in general, but particularly small, mid-sized businesses, is like nobody's there yet. And so we had a lot of feature sets that like sounded really cool. And then as I do more like sales calls, people are like, what exactly does that mean? And I was like, man, why would they even pay extra if they don't even like grasp why they even care about this feature? And then the second one that I think is like, I think I even continue to be challenged by this, is like not niching down our market messaging fast enough. Data's in this space of like, everyone has data problems. And I still am challenged by this, but like, you don't want to ever close off an opportunity to, service a market that you could in theory help. But every time that I've at least taken a step to say, all right, for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months, we're going to really go deep on like outreach to these people, conversations with these people, marketing messaging to these people. I learned so much by just being very pointed about that I know, like, for any business out there, the more you can just really get hyper focused on a niche. And like, I always love when people say like niche until it hurts. Yeah. That's like what I'm always trying to go after. And I still think like, I wish we could go faster at doing that, because I think it helps us learn way faster.
Yeah, no, cool. Those are really good insights. Friends, continue to put questions in the chat. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a little chat bubble. Please put your questions in there. Delilah is dutifully studying for the questions and serving them up. We'll be moving to our Q&A portion. And for those of you, if you are looking at all of us across the top, in the upper right-hand corner of Gather, if you click the diagonal arrow, everybody's face will get nice and big. So if we're still just at the top in little thumbnails, if you'd like to see us bigger, not too big, then that will make the screen a little bit bigger. And again, love it if you turn your cameras on, because our panelists can see you or not see you, and it's so much more fun to talk to smiling faces. Thank you, Karina, Nick, Nate, Carrie. I can see you guys. I'm just picking on a few people. Woo-woo. Okay. I want to talk about building the MVP. So, Aneela, what was the most challenging part of going from this kind of idea to prototype to like tangible MVP? And I got a two-parter here. What was the most challenging part, and what was the most exciting part?
Yeah. So the most challenging part was, I would say, right at the beginning. Samir and I do not have, coding hardware backgrounds, and so the challenge was, first, we want to build this, but we don't know how. And I had to get over my hair pulling secret as well as my business idea secret, because there's always that fear of, if I tell someone about my idea, they're going to go do it. And connect with the Twin Cities startup community and try to find the right people. And so that was the first challenge, was finding the right team. And we worked with one person we've met online, like, who was in DC, and that was really, really hard for a time difference, and he was working at the same time, and it was just not working out. And then we just magically met John and Kirk, who are our two technical co-founders. And so that was probably the biggest challenge in getting the product off the ground, was just finding the right people to help us make it happen. And I guess in making the MVP, the most joyous moment was probably literally making it in a weekend at an IoT hackathon here in Minneapolis, and winning that competition, because that was just the validation for us to just kind of keep going nights and weekends, just to get to know each other, and to we met them at this hackathon,
Yeah.
and so that was both the challenge and the joy all happened in the same day, in the same weekend.
Right. Nice. That's cool. Braden, what was the most challenging part, and what was the most exciting part?
Oh, wow. I mean, just seeing your software product come to life, of course, is the most exciting part, and working with other people to build it too. I mean, it's fun it's as fun as it is to sit down and put some headphones in and crank out code. Collaborating with other people to build out that shared vision and solve someone's problem, it's the most exciting. It never gets old. The biggest mistake I made building my MVP was I significantly over-engineered the solution. Coming from, as a software engineer working at PayPal, everything we built and delivered to production had to be scalable for millions of people to start using, the day it hits production. So of course I took that mindset. It's like, well, I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm going to make millions of dollars. There's going to be so many people using my product the day I launch it. I'm going to build it, and they're just going to come, of course, because that's how business works. It's not. But really, I over-engineered a solution and really focused on building a platform that it could scale to hundreds of thousands of users on day one. But realistically, we did not need that level of complexity and scale on day one, because it took 6 months to get maybe 10 customers using the product actively. And so, biggest problem was just really wasting a lot of effort building a scalable solution on day one, when you could hack together something that just works. As long as it looks good and customers are using it to solve a problem, you can always keep building, you can always re-engineer, you can always throw more money at the problem. But definitely don't waste time over-engineering a solution when you haven't even validated that people are going to be using the solution.
Yes, that's really good, Braden. We're going to hold that last little thought about validation. But before we go there, Luke, what was the most challenging part for you, and what was the most exciting?
Yeah, mine again is a bit unique just because we had a very functioning, successful services side of our business, and having to transition into a productized service, managed service like that is always a tricky balance, right? Every consulting agency probably in the world is trying to do this type of transition, and so I think the most challenging part for me is having to make that leap into transitioning a business model where many people are billing cash flow is great to, all right, the future is going to be in this type of more scalable type of subscription managed service type approach. So I always think back to the great Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec saying you can't half-ass two things, you should whole-ass one thing really good. So that was my challenge.
Very true. That's great. I love that. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We are going to open this up to our Q&A portion. We've got some great questions that have been simmering in the chat. As we continue to do this Q&A and round out our panel, if you think of more questions, please put them in the chat. But I'd like to start with the very first question, and I'm going to go back to you, Braden. How do you know when a feature has been validated enough to go into an MVP?
Well, it depends on who your target customer is and kind of where you are in your product lifecycle. But the best way to validate that it can go into your MVP is someone going to be paying for that specifically? And really, if you find yourself needing to build a lot of features into your MVP just to get something out the door, it's very possible it's not even a question of scope, but rather maybe I need to think of an even more niche target customer to start out with. And maybe I need to think of an even more niche problem that they have. If my solution is 5 core features that they need, and all of those together is going to solve this somewhat efficiency problem the business has, well, maybe there's something within that problem, like one specific part of that you could focus on first and launch, and maybe do the other parts as a service to accommodate your MVP.
Sure.
But if you have too many features going out at once, you're not going to know. You're just going to end up wasting time building and less time validating.
Yeah. And I know, Aneela, one of the things that's easier said than done when you're on the digital side of things is like, oh, it's just code. I'm just adding, I'm just going to add this little widget or this thing. But when we start talking about building a product, how do you make sure that you've validated something before you put it into your product?
Yeah, great question. So we really, in terms of feature set, we kind of knew what we needed. We validated with alpha testers, beta testers. And then once we got to market, it was more about, well, what are people asking for? And then deciding, okay, is it worth our time and effort to build it? And how does it really fit with our mission of helping people build awareness to take control of these conditions? And then when we do build and developing code, again, that's not my wheelhouse at all, but what we'll do is we'll go, design things, which is where I would come in, write the copy around stuff, develop it, and then just do that internal Q&A and then push it live and then work through. Hopefully we got all the different platforms and all the different things, and we all have different Android devices and all of that, and we work our development partners as well to do QA, and then we get it out there. So it's kind of just that iterative process.
Okay, cool. That's great. That's great advice. Luke, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, on this one, I'd probably echo a lot of the same things that Braden and Aneela have already mentioned. I don't know if I've got too much more to add. It was pretty wise answers there.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I was curious. It's I kind of echo the same thing. I was thinking in my head, how would I answer this one? You guys, no, that was great. Now, many of us are starting as lean startup entrepreneurs. Because we're not all walking around with tons of resources, or we haven't been funded yet for this big idea, this great idea that we want to bring to the market. Where would you, Luke, I'll start with you. Where would you tell someone to start when they're first building their product? Where would you tell them to start?
I'm super biased in this answer, but I mean, I just love consulting, right? So I think if you really truly think there's a pain point there, like what are clever ways that you can get maybe even a really, it's not even a profitable endeavor, but just like some kind of small engagement to see, is somebody willing to put up $1 of investment to solve this problem? And how can I basically get paid to like maybe even iterate on that first prototype for it, right? The way our productized services came to life was just through a number of consulting, and we just stitched together the themes. I'm not coming from the same type of experience that Braden and Aneela are from a product perspective. I think it's like brilliant for people that can get there on phase one, but for the rest of us, the consultants in the room, like I think if you can get that initial engagement and just like learn with your customers, get referrals within that industry, it's the best way for you to kind of create that financial runway that you're looking for, while you continue to search and iterate on like, what is that product that's really going to help me scale beyond that? So that's where I would start.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Aneela, how about for you? As we talk about where do we if we have a limited budget, where would you tell someone how would you tell them to start building first?
Yeah. I was talking with someone a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about how they were talking with someone who wanted to start a business, and the first thing that person did was go rent space. And so I think the biggest thing is just focus on the problem solution and none of the other stuff that you think is about building a business. And so that you are really focusing all your resources on serving the community that you've chosen to serve. And it really starts with, in terms of conserving resources, it really is about trying to figure out what are what's the smallest feature set I need to build, and what are the cheapest ways I can build it. So for example, we used like off the shelf wristbands and 3D printed cases and things like that before going to actually co-molding and building tools, the tooling that is needed for mass manufacturing.
Right.
And so I mean, honestly, even before that, I was using a slap bracelet with a plastic disc glued onto my hand, and just like the electronic guts, like just right out there for everyone to see, So like, really just go as like unclean as you can, as just start somewhere. Even with your designs and stuff, do black and white to start. Just get something out there for people to react to.
Yeah. That's great, Aneela. Braden.
Yeah, speaking of unclean, I mean, my answer is going to be sales is really kind of where you need to start, especially, it sounds counterintuitive in the software world there to start with sales, but you see all these software products online that are product led where you can just sign up and start using it. Don't start there. That's a trap. You really need to leverage sales as a method to not only talk to more customers, hey, that's a win, but also to get that money so you can go build it. So if you're a technical person that can write code, what I recommend now is if your problem is painful enough and you can get some sketches out, you should be able to go talk to your customers, demonstrate, hey, I can actually build this. I am technical. I write code. This is my resume. I can build this for you to solve the problem. Are you ready to go? Like, do you want to pay me to build this? And so definitely leveraging sales to fund your efforts to build. And then kind of like Luke was saying too, if you're not technical, or even if you are technical, another path that I also like a lot, especially after years of being in the space, is start with consulting, start as a service. If it's a painful enough problem, say, hey, well, I'll do it for you. And so you don't have to worry about it. Just pay me $300 a month. And then you just keep doing that, start building up a team yourself to do that service, manually at first, but you're using that revenue you're getting from those, contracts and from the consulting to then fund and build the software that can then automate that process for you and your internal team. And then eventually you can go the route of selling a software product instead of a service. But don't shy away from services in the software world just because, oh yeah, I'm a software startup. If you think of the acronym SaaS, which is SaaS startup, software as a service, service is in the name. So you don't shy away from services, and again, we're all here to make money, and software is just a method to do that, and service is another method.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I've got a good question here from Eric. When it comes to marketing or influencing, how do you share your idea without the idea being taken? How do you share the idea without the idea being taken? Braden, what do you think?
You know, I smile because when I first started, I was very afraid of people, you know, trying to take my idea. And, you know, I grew up, my mom's a lawyer. And so she said, everyone you share your idea with, they need to sign an NDA. Here's an NDA template. Go make sure anyone you talk to signs this NDA template so that, you know, no one steals your idea. I'm like, well, no one cares. I mean, people do care. But the amount of effort and time that you're thinking about this idea and the amount of time and effort you're putting into building this product, no one's going to do that. I might hear Luke's data consulting, you know, company. It's like, hey, that's a great idea. Cool. Do I want to do that? No. It's cool, but it's way more exciting to him than it is to me. And similar for a software product, an idea you have, no one's going to know that problem space better than you. And just don't be afraid of someone, you know, liking your idea, giving you feedback and recommendations. Because at the end of the day, what's going to differentiate you from your competition is not the idea, but it's your ability to execute, know your customers, and deliver value. Yeah,
I totally agree, Braden. Luke, what are your thoughts?
Hey, Braden just took my answer at the end there. It's just, I think I have the same fears of, I have all these like novel ideas that I didn't want taken, but at the end of the day, the people who win in the market are the ones that are executing. So whether it's driven by passion or just your unique ability to, you know, operate this business model and scale it. I think ideas are good to protect, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, it's like you have to be the one that runs with it. So nowadays, I'm more about sharing all the cool things we're doing with customers, getting case studies, testimonials, quotes. Like, I don't care if my competition knows who we're working with. Mm-hmm. I just want to execute better than them.
Yeah. You know, I know, Aneela, when I was launching a physical product, just a little bit after you had started HabitAware, there were a lot of people that would come up and talk about, well, is someone just going to copy this? How did you handle that as you developed HabitAware? Because at some point, you have to show your product, right? But when you're in that development stage, it can feel like, oh, someone's going to take this. Like, what was that like for you, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I said a little bit earlier on, right? That idea of sharing your business secret. That is the fear talking. That's why I'm wearing this shirt today, because entrepreneurs need to be fearless. Fear is basic. Fear is that emotion that's trying to protect us from failure, from mistake, from feeling bad about ourselves. And if, you know, to Luke's point, if we can't execute, then there's no point. Like, then just like throw away all the napkins, you know? It's like with these ideas. And the only way to execute is to start talking about your idea with your stakeholders and with people that can help you build it. And so I really wouldn't stop looking at it as, oh, someone's going to take my idea, and start looking at it as someone's going to help me make my idea better.
Yeah.
And also remember that even if someone does say, oh, that's snap, that's awesome, I'm going to do it, they're going to do it differently. And they're going to do it in a way that you won't. And it may get harder, but it will allow you to also just really figure out what are your strengths and in the way that you meet the market. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've gone through... with HabitAware, we've gone through 2 competitive cycles of people seeing what we were doing, pivoting, and trying to come into our market, trying to take our market share, but not knowing the problem as well as we do, right? And so not being able to truly meet the need of the consumers, and as soon as the going got tough, they're both out. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, last year, I tried to start a second company, and had a ton of competition from another company here in town starting a similar software service. And it just got to the point where I was kind of like, you know what? I have a different vision, and I don't want to do it the way that they're doing it, but they have this, like, the 2 of us together would be like an amazing partnership. But for whatever, you know, I also just decided I wanted to stay and focus on HabitAware, but I still gave it a try. We still did what we could to get it to market, and we learned a ton. And and that's okay too, right? That other people may come up with similar ideas and may come to market, at different times or at same times, but the team that's going to be the one is going to be the one that has the vision, has the energy, the effort, and the desire. And so all of that comes together. But I really tell you, don't get scared about sharing your ideas. Don't get scared about the idea being taken away, because it's here. They can't take that from you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like how you were framing that up, Aneela, because I think a big part of what you're talking about is truly your unfair advantage. And in your case, it really was not just what the idea was. Everybody has ideas, but your knowledge of the space, your investment in the problem, and the population that you're trying to serve with your product or service, it was just so much more intense than anybody else that was in the space. So I think that's really cool how you framed that up. Now, one of the burning questions when we have this all the time at ILT Academy with our students comes around pricing, right? How do you price, especially when you're trying to go from that early MVP stage to like a later stage product? But Casey, thank you for the question. So I want to start with Braden. Braden, how did you go about pricing when you were pre-MVP? And then, of course, like how did that change after launch?
Yeah, I think I started, like, again, this was a new world for me. So what I did was I just looked at, similar products, competing solutions, and said, okay, they're charging $49.99 a month. I'm going to do the same thing. Or I'm going to drop it to be lower than them so that people choose me over them. It's not the right way to do it, but it's a great way to baseline. And that's kind of the struggle when you're looking at software and you're trying to build something product-led versus sales-led. If you're doing it product-led, you have to figure out your pricing on day one and put it up on your website so everyone can see. Mm-hmm. It's always nice to be able to show your pricing, especially in software world. But if you're going sales-led, the strategy now and what I eventually adopted to was I would go into those sales meetings and say, hey, the product is going to be $100 a month. Customer says, oh, but that's amazing. I'm going to sign up right now. And then they do. It's like, okay, next customer, it's $150 a month. Oh, that's great. Oh, it's $500 a month. I need to think about it. And you kind of keep raising your prices, especially in the early days before you maybe even have a pricing page, before your product is really fine-tuned. Maybe you're still iterating on some of the features that are going to be core to your product. If you do it sales-led, it gives you a lot more flexibility to determine your pricing early, because you want to keep raising your prices until just enough people are saying, oh, no, I can't do that. But enough people are saying, yes, I'll still pay for that. And I don't know what that sweet number is, but you kind of get to a point where enough people are buying at a really high price point. And then once you get to that point, you can maybe start putting your pricing on your website, make it a little more stable. Mm-hmm. And then eventually you just kind of keep iterating on your prices as you add more features and as you're exploring new customer segments to go after.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. I really like that. Luke, how about for you? How did you go about pricing?
Yeah, it's great. And it's still a continuous learning journey on our side too, because even in the world of productized services, there's a lot of like it depends variables that is not, it's not the benefit of or productized services. I think just has that extra challenge over a product with set features. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, yeah, I would agree. This is like why I'm a big proponent of as much as you can founder-led sales, so that you can get a feel in those sales calls in that room of how people are reacting to it. And yeah, you keep constantly kind of pushing on this price point. If you're getting 100% close rates, immediate yeses, you're priced too low. If you're getting just laughed out of the room, you're priced too high. But somewhere in the middle lays your price point. And you want them to a point where they're like, hopefully hemming and hawing over it, but are, in theory saying more yes than no's in that space. And this is where it gets down to just iterations and repetition. You want a good marketing funnel, sales channel that allows you to afford these multiple conversations, because it's just a law of numbers at that point. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but you need to find that healthy balance of that price point. And for us, like, I think maybe another thing to think about too is the replacement cost of or the alternative cost of not choosing the service. So in our world of managed analytics services, the most apparent comparison would be, well, why don't I just go out and hire a full-time data engineer? So then I can just go look at a full-time data engineer salary, and therein lies my price point.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. Aneela?
Yeah, pricing I think is a lot different for us as a B2C physical product. It's just way different, and also there's no like Facebook support groups for managing data analytics where you can kind of get a sense for what the pain that folks are in, kind of in that way. And for us, we did our pre-order campaign in sorry, not even a pre-order campaign, before we even we got to a point of building some sense of community, like a newsletter, and keeping people up to date on what we were building, and then went to a conference where we asked for like pre-sales, basically, like put down your credit card today for $50 and in a few months we'll get it to you. And at this conference, we had enough people there say yes that we said, okay, now we'll keep going. And then we got into Hacks, which is a hardware accelerator program. And at the end of that program, so we told those people, we're not going to charge you, we're not going to deliver either, but we're going to go through this program, and then you're getting yours for free. So, and then after that, we did a pre-order campaign, and now, our price points really hasn't changed much since we've started, aside from adding in, like Braden and Luke were both saying, as you add more features, you can charge more. But our goal is really to keep this thing as accessible as possible, taking into account how much it costs for the physical aspect of, all of the hardware and things like that, and the cost of shipping and the cost of all of the things that are going into building a physical product that's also digital, as well as the value that we provide. I mean, we have had people say, you should be charging way more for the life change you've given me, but we also need to make sure that it's accessible for people at all different socioeconomic levels. And so for us, it's more about, let's try to reach as many people as we can, and let's try to keep building services for other folks. But we've really kept our price point pretty steady, even though we've had to deal with a lot of issues through COVID and supply chain and stuff like that.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's really interesting. So, as you guys have been developing out pricing and figuring out how to get so now your product's in the market, what are some strategies that you use to test your MVP and to get feedback with real people? Because we can live in our prototype lab or in our office, but how do you actually get feedback from your customers, and what did you find was most effective? So that you can get high quality feedback, not just like, yeah, it was great. Luke?
Yeah, again, in the productized services space, like very much our likely higher price point than most like products is built around strong relationships. So we have it kind of naturally built into our offering that there are check-in points. There's kind of a sense of like fractional data leadership that comes with our particular package. And so that feedback loop, it has to be there because the relationship's going to keep us around with our subscription service more than anything. And so that creates a really, healthy loop that at least once a quarter, if not more, I'm meeting with the people that are ultimately signing off on sending that check every month to make sure that they're getting the value out of it. And then for me to use that time to not only, yes, make sure that they're satisfied as a customer, but also what other pain points are they experiencing in their unique leadership position that we may not be solving today? What are other people in their network of other executives that work in that industry that might also be experiencing and be worthy of an introduction? So there's a lot of opportunities to not only improve our product, but also maybe even get some free advertising out of it.
Yeah. Braden, how about you?
Yeah, I think there's, a couple methods, definitely like looking at qualitative and quantitative feedback. So for us, since we were, for a period, we were product led. So we, would measure kind of how often people were getting through our onboarding flow, and we'd see at what point are they dropping off. We'd see, we'd look at the metrics and see, okay, how often are people coming back and using our product every single month? So we were looking at monthly active users. For more consumer-based software applications, you might be looking at daily active users. For more enterprise ones, monthly active, or even, could even say like how often someone from the team is coming in or using the product. But typically for us, since we were mainly focused on monthly reporting for agencies, we were looking at like what was our monthly active user rate. And then just being very specific when you're onboarding a new customer, setting up some customer success cadences. So say, hey, this is the goal that we want you to be able to onboard and use the product. Does this goal make sense to you? Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. Well, let's have you do that today on this call right now, and use it as a chance to learn how they use your product and walk through it and make sure that you're guiding them to be able to actually use the product. Because then, if you're on a call with them, and this is not scalable, but in the early days you have to do this, you're on a call with them, they're going to be much more likely to give you feedback, or you'll be able to see the frustrations or the issues they have navigating around your solution. If you're on a call with them and they can just vocally say, oh yeah, I don't know how to do that, or I don't know where to go. So it's a lot of it is just putting in FaceTime with your customers, not just at the point, of making the sale, but also onboarding them and helping them use your product.
Aneela, how about for you?
Yeah, definitely hearing some overlap. First to test that MVP, it was with alpha testers. So one of the interesting things was, as I was sharing my hair pulling secret and my business idea secret, people would come up to me after and be like, I bite my nails, or I pull my hair. And so I was slowly like creating a little list of people that could test once we had something closer to user friendly. And then we also do surveys pre and post, getting the bracelet, things like that. Going to conferences, to the point of Luke and Braden in terms of like seeing the reaction of people. Conferences have been really, really helpful for us. Mental health conferences, of course, so people with this condition as well as treatment professionals. And then we also do training calls. So we get to have that touch point with the customer to help them set it up and to help guide them on how to use it and to just also just let them have a moment to share a little bit of their journey, because oftentimes people are holding on to this stuff for so long that they just want to talk to someone who gets it and who's been there. So those are all the touch points to help us test and iterate and make sure that our customers are having a good experience.
Yeah. The startup process and building a product, it's not all peaches and cream, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that will get in the way. Some are out of your control, like a pandemic. Some are in your control or more in your control. How do you guys stay motivated? Braden, if I would to start off with you, how do you stay motivated with setbacks that happen along the way?
Yeah, I think you just have to look at your North Star, and for me, it was I was building a problem in a space that I thought was super interesting. I'm not a marketer, but I think pulling data from these marketing platforms and even writing a little script to automatically follow people on Twitter, it's really cool. Just the level of data you have accessible to you, a little scary too, but just getting that access to the data and being able to create solutions and create these data visualizations and have them, have my customers be able to press a button and have these presentation reports generated, and just see them light up and how excited they get. Just building something that gets someone excited and solves a real problem. There's definitely going to be ups and downs. You're not going to get it right the first time, maybe not even the second or third time. But you just kind of keep remembering that you're solving a real problem. If you're not solving a real problem, then you have other problems. But that you're solving a real problem that you're passionate about, and just don't lose that passion. Just remember you're going to have setbacks and failures, and if you can you keep going and you still see a path forward to make money and then be able to continue to sustain the business, then you just keep pushing on.
Yeah. Aneela, how about for you?
Oh, without a doubt, it's there's so many ups and downs in building a product, and just like there's a lot of pain. But without a doubt, it's what people tell us. It's their stories of coming back and the life change and the epiphanies and the aha moments, and just it's those letters of like, I pulled for so long and I was able to wear my hair down for my prom, and like just these little like moments, and that's the stuff that helps keep us going. Is just knowing that if we don't, then who will, we have to be there for people.
Luke, how about for you? What motivates you?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I'd echo a lot of what Braden and Aneela said. Like for Aneela, I can't think of a better just like personal mission focus of a product, and Braden, I would echo from being passionate about just like the problems that we're solving. Right, I'm kind of more on the lens of I enjoy solving problems using data for businesses. So that just allows me that freedom to when there's ups and downs in the business. So like at the end of the day, I get an opportunity to work with a ton of other crazy successful business owners and like be their data person. That's awesome. That jazzes me up for the day. And so it's about picking a problem space that you just have personal passion for, that you'd be working on whether you're making money or not. And yeah, truly just being excited about the journey, because yeah, it's full of ups and downs. And maybe one other thing that hasn't been mentioned is just like having a good peer community around you. So like this, everyone in this call, like this is amazing. You need to, entrepreneurship is an incredibly lonely journey, even if you have co-founders. So if you can bring other people along the journey that may not understand the trials and tribulations we put ourselves as entrepreneurs, that's worth its weight in gold.
Awesome. No, that's well said. Well, as we round it, we have two questions left, but I'd like to start with Aneela. What would you do differently in the future if you were to build another MVP or your next project? What would you do differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to this kid sizing. I think the industrial design for the bracelet was the hardest thing, because that was also the thing that we didn't have the expertise on our co-founding team. Like everything else, marketing, firmware, software, engineering, like hardware, electrical. I think that's where I think we kind of just said between the four of us, we'll figure it out. And I think it would have been really, really helpful to have an expert in that be on, maybe not necessarily the founding team, but be on the ideation team for that, not just kind of go straight with what our manufacturing partner came to us with, because they already had that manufacturing lens on and not necessarily what's right for the consumer. So that's where I would go back and redo this.
Okay, that's great. Luke, how about for you? What would you do differently in the future or your next product?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things I'm thinking through is, I think the struggle for me was, having a working consulting business and trying to like pivot into more of managed services and productized services. So I think in hindsight, I wish I either had the luxury or ability to like, I guess, slow down and actually sketch out what even the next year was going to look like from a focus area. I think putting pen to paper on, hey, I'm going to have to spend this investment of 6 months of putting a lot of marketing research into this unique audience to get there. I think a lot of times I was like, I'm just shooting from the hip every week trying to see like who's going to buy my product. And I think the more time I would have spent maybe just writing that focus areas down, completely understanding the fact that like, 6 months from now, I'm going to have to rip up my marketing strategy and start over. I think it would have been a lot successful to do some more targeted bets. And so if I were to do it again, yeah, it would be, if I had to start from scratch, just like figure out that targeted bet and commit myself to the 6 to 9 months of seeing what's there.
Oh, that's great. That's great advice. Braden.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me I would be selling it before I was building. I would, get the designs put together. I would then go and start selling it to target customers, to my target customer, and use that as my method of validating before I spent any time building. And if for whatever the solution or the problem space I'm operating in is, if that method isn't going to work, then I would try and sell a service to kind of solve that problem. And that's definitely where I would go. If I go back and start another software venture, I'm starting for sure as a service oriented solution, or as a, sketch some things out in Figma, present it and say, okay, well, we'll build this. It'll be 30 grand. Yeah, and I'm in the B2B software space, so this is more business to business focused, but definitely focusing more on the validation and less on the building for my future ventures.
Yeah, that's great, Karina. That was kind of on the lines of your question of like, what should we show? Being really careful on not building, or not overbuilding, but build as little as possible so that you can get this idea in front of potential buyers. And do they want it? Would they want it? And then I really liked how you guys framed up that, sales led versus product led piece. Like, well, what will people pay? And then will they pay? And that was really great to hear you guys talk about that piece. As we close out, I'd like to know, what is one thing that this community of entrepreneurs can do to help each of you on your mission? And so, Aneela, I'd love to start with you. What's one thing that this community can do to help you on your mission?
Yeah, I mean, these behaviors affect an estimated 5% of people in the US, and then globally, you can imagine how many that is. But people don't know about these conditions. Like myself, I was hurting and hiding for 20 plus years. And if it's not you, that 1 in 20, if it's not you, it's someone you love. And so my ask of you today is to actually share my TEDx talk on your Facebook page so that we can help someone you love that's hurting and hiding. So I'm putting that in the chat. And if you feel compelled to please share it, that's my ask so that we can help other people.
Awesome. Thank you, Aneela. I appreciate that. Braden, how about for you?
Yeah, I'm still working through my own personal mission now that I'm full-time consulting and freelancing. I've been building up my own little development firm to help early stage businesses and mid-sized companies build out their first digital products. So a lot of 0 to 1 development, both on the building side as well as the go-to-market side. So feel free to reach out. I'm always down to talk about your software idea, give free advice, and just give back to the community and talk through things. And likewise, if you meet people that are building a software product and they need someone to talk to, I'm always I just love talking about it. It's fun. That's why I'm here. So
awesome. Thank you, Braden. Luke.
Yeah, one of the coolest industries that we've just accidentally stumbled into lately has been K-12 school districts, and it's probably one of the first times that I've stumbled into an industry niche that, I mean, first of all, it's very relevant in my life. Of my oldest son now just started kindergarten, so I'm a little bit more invested in our public school system. But if anyone on this call happens to have any connections with people who work in school districts and are in need of better student analytics on how students are performing in the public school system, would love to chat about just some of the problems they're experiencing, and hopefully we can all work together to fix the school systems ahead of us.
Awesome. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming in and talking today at our webinar. I've got everybody's face on the screen right now. So let's give our 3 speakers a round of applause. We can see everybody. Thank you. Guys, great talk. This officially ends our webinar, except for one final act. We need to take a group photo. So what I'm going to have everybody do, I'm going to count it off, and I will be taking a screen capture here, but let me just get some tunes up here because that's way more fun with the tunes. Okay. All right, guys. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I gotta load the screen 1 sec. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 2 more. Now we do have to do a funny face. So funny faces are in vogue. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. 1 more. Just in case one was blinking, and we just do. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, hold on. Can't use 2 hands. Well, I gotta do it 1 more time. All right, Diana, keep holding. Diana, keep holding. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, friends, thank you so much for coming today. Please feel free, walk off the stage, come into the center. You guys can network, gather. We'll be here hanging out. If you want to talk to any of our speakers, they will come off the stage and you guys can hang out. So thank you, everybody, for coming to ILT Academy, and we will see you for the next webinar and the new year.